Hi friends, good evening everyone, and this is your host Ankit joining you from India. Namaste to the world, and good morning to America. We have a special guest with us, Dr. Vicki Rackner from US, and we have our co-host Kimberly Calhoun joining us from Raleigh. Welcome to everyone, and let's start the show today. So, Dr. Vicki, how are you coping up with the current pandemic?
I feel very fortunate. I am blessed, and I'm excited to be here, helping other people see how they can get through also.
Great.
Oh, yes. Vicki, share with us a little bit about your past. We were talking before the show started, but you've got quite an interesting story. I mean, you started out as a surgeon, and now you've made a pivot. And share your journey with us.
You bet. Well, actually, I was a graduate student in physics. When I had a surgical emergency, I fainted on my way to the bathroom. I was bleeding internally, and by the time I got into the operating room, about half of my blood volume was in my pelvis. I thought, this is the end. And I was so grateful to wake up that I thought, you know what, I'm going to become a surgeon and save other people's lives like my own had been saved. And that's how my surgical career started. I was a breast surgeon primarily. It was such a humbling experience, such an honor to be able to be with women at this stage in their life and help them make choices that worked for them. I was in private practice. And once my practice was settled, it was time to start my family. I actually conceived with in vitro fertilization. I operated my whole pregnancy. I had this beautiful son, and I had a plan. I converted one of my exam rooms to a nursery, and my office manager, who was a mother, was going to take care of him while I was operating. And things sort of went along until I recognized the truth that my son was different than other children. And when he wasn't talking, I pushed my pediatrician for an evaluation, and he was diagnosed with broad spectrum developmental delay.
Wow.
And my heart broke. I thought I'd operated my whole pregnancy. What have I done to my son? He was enrolled in a special state-funded school, which was a magnificent place. And I decided to take a leave of absence because the most important thing in my life was my son. And so I was going to do whatever it was I needed to do to optimize his health. I actually supported myself by being an expert in medical malpractice lawsuits. So really seeing where care goes off track. Mm-hmm. And the wonderful news is that a year after he was enrolled in the school, he was retested and he was booted out because he met all of his developmental landmarks. And he is a perfectly healthy 22-year-old. If you met him, you'd never have any sense that he got off to this rocky start. But this was really a life-changing experience for me.
Wow. To hear a doctor parent share that kind of story is so impactful because, as a doctor, you think you cover all the dots, right? That you got it covered. Your kids are going to be fine, and you go on and heal people. And then you were dealing with, oh my gosh, my own child is sick and needs my help. That's huge. So you made that change. No regrets. This is what I tell people: have no regrets in life, right?
Right.
No regrets, but there went your career, right? I mean, sorry to say, but there went your surgical career. Am I right?
Well, I chose it. I chose what was most important in my life.
Right.
And it was clear to me that it was him. But yes, I did lose that income potential for that year, but I pivoted. I found something else that I could do, right? And this experience was really transformative for me. So when I took my leave of absence, really what I wanted to do was cure him, right? I wanted to make sure that he could be the child that I imagined in my brain. But what I discovered through this experience was that my job as a parent was not to make him into who I wanted him to be. My job was to help him be the best version of himself. And I think that that is true healing, helping people be most fully who they are. My superpower is seeing possibilities. And so I was going to see the possibilities for my son, no matter what the biologic reality was.
So explain to us a little bit more about what he was diagnosed with. I don't think a lot of people know what that is. That's a big, explain a little bit more about that.
Sure. So as we look at growth and development, we know where people should be, right? If you've ever brought your child to the pediatrician, you know, he's in the 80th percent height and, you know, 90% weight. And so there are certain developmental landmarks, things that people should be doing with their brains. And he was falling short of those landmarks. He wasn't doing the kinds of things. So he wasn't rolling over until very late. He wasn't talking. His fine motor, everything was delayed. And that's just the way his brain is managing, right? So, you know, there's a bell curve that describes where people are. And he was a couple standard deviations off the mean. And that's all it meant. But I didn't know what that had meant at the time because, you know, I had exposed him to, excuse me, anesthetic gases. I took out gallbladders and we did a fluoroscopic evaluation. And even though I wore lead, I thought, you know, what had my choices, how had my choices impacted him? But this is who he is.
But you know, as a mother, we do that. We when we're hit with tragedy situations or challenges like that, we blame ourselves first, right? We always that's part of the grieving process. But women in general, we really take in majority of the blame. I see this everywhere I go, where women are always apologizing. I'm sorry. Even if they didn't have anything to do with the problem. It's always, I'm sorry. It's just a sympathetic reaction that we go through, but I think it's just naturally in us. So he's great now. He's 22. And where is he at during this COVID situation?
Well, I am really, really proud of him because he decided to go in the front lines. He's actually working in Trader Joe's at the epicenter of the initial outbreak in Seattle.
Wow.
And he chose to go there. Because he's young and healthy, and I'm really, really proud of him.
Well, you know, some of the things that we talk about here on the show is the ability to protect yourself from the COVID. And they say a good, healthy immunity system is the best you can have, right?
There's no question. Yes. Yes.
So young and healthy, even though they know that young people have been becoming infected, it's generally people who are not healthy and resilient. And that's very, very important in a crisis like this. Resilience comes in different packages too. And we talk about that, right? Resilience and how we eat, how we feed our bodies, and the strength, the exercising, the praying, the mental preparedness. All of this is packaged together for a good immune system. But you wrote a book on this.
I did. So my book is Caregiving Without Regrets. And I have to say that I learned all of these lessons the hard way. In going through this experience with my son, I personally burned out. And so I just wanted to put together the kinds of lessons that I learned. If I had to do it over again, what would I have done differently? And so these are my lessons. And I'll tell you, when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it's sort of like I had written the roadmap for how I wanted to behave. And here we are now. We're all caregivers, right? We're all looking after each other. Here you are with your broadcast. You are taking care of your viewers. Mm-hmm. And so we all need to come together right now and take care of each other. So I think that these are important lessons for today.
Yeah, but what are some of the things in your book that you would share with people in this COVID crisis right now? What are some important things that we need to do right now?
All right. So my prescription for health is be who you are, know what you know, and do what you need to do. So I think that this is a time in which we all want to bring our gifts to the world. So if you know what it is that you do really well and things that you do without effort, bring it, be willing to share it, even if it means a pivot for you. So let me give you an example. I had a friend, Susie, And we both had children who were the same age. I personally love to cook. Susie doesn't like to cook so much, but Susie is brilliant at entertaining children. So we would get together every Sunday for dinner, and Susie would take care of the kids while I made the dinner so I wasn't distracted. We'd have a nice dinner, and then oftentimes she'd organize a play or something, and then we'd enjoy that later. And she said to me at one point, I feel so guilty. You're doing all the cooking, and, I feel like I should be doing it. And I said, Susie, don't you get it? This is so beautiful. I love to cook. It's effortless for me. You love being with the kids. It's effortless for you. And this is perfect. So if we can all think more broadly about the gifts that we have, what we're bringing, and we all share, it would be a beautiful thing. It's kind of like making stone soup or, hosting a Thanksgiving meal where everyone contributes something.
That's, you could not have explained the best solution ever. And that's actually good, successful businesses run off of the same philosophy, right? Your team, you're not all alike. But the idea is to get everybody's strength and utilize their strength and skill sets that benefit everyone. But not everyone thinks alike. Not everyone has the same opinion or same skill sets. But the best teams and companies are the ones where you surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, right, in that area. And then you have a perfect meal, right? That's
right.
That's
exactly. The paradox, though, is that most people find their area of giftedness so easy that they don't recognize it as a gift. So one little trick that I offer people is, if you don't know exactly what your gifts are, just go to your friends and say, hey, if I were on the cover of a magazine, what would the magazine be? What would the article be about? Or if you could just call one person for something, under what conditions would you call me?
Right. No, and that's a good one too. I always like to, I would ask the team, we would cross over and write something good about each person in the team.
Right.
How would you define that person? Another thing I would do is I would ask each of the team to do a spin-off about our project, right? And each person had a different message about what the project was, but it gave me an idea of how they perceived it. And they got different ideas of how each other think, right? Because everybody thinks different.
Right.
But that's the way you grow. But it's not just successful in business; it's successful in personal life. Now, can I call you Dr. Vicki?
You bet.
Okay. So Dr. Vicki, we were talking earlier about how so many people are alone right now during the COVID crisis. And this was a topic we had yesterday with one of our surgeons from India, that he was very, very concerned. You've got a lot of elderly people. Now, in our country, a lot of the elderly people are in one big home. But there are still some who are home alone. People who didn't get locked down with a group of people, right? They were at home on day of lockdown. And, I've been in a few lockdown situations before, and it's kind of scary when there's nobody else there with you. So what kind of advice would you give people who are alone to not feel so alone, but also to stay on top of things where the days don't blend? What are some things that you would share with these people?
All right. Well, first, I want to recognize our biology. We are social creatures, and we have evolved to be part of a group. Now, there's difference between introverts and extroverts. I personally am an introvert, and what that means is that I get recharged with alone time. So part of my challenge as a young mother, for example, was finding that alone time. Extroverts, on the other hand, get recharged by being in the presence of others. But even introverts like myself have a biologic need to get and stay connected with others. And as wonderful as the technology is, there's something very magical about being in the physical presence of others. So I think the first step is just recognizing this is difficult. We're going against our very biology, and say, this is hard. This is our reality. The second thing I think is to think about what it is that you want. What kind of contact do you yearn for? It's kind of like going into the kitchen instead of just opening up the fridge and seeing what's there. It's sort of like, what am I hungry for? So what are you hungry for? Is it human companionship? So I live on a beautiful cul-de-sac, and my next door neighbor sort of shouted across, "Hey, can I pet your dog?" And for her, touch is her love language. So for her, being alone, not being able to touch anybody, that's a huge challenge. But she came up with a creative solution: pet my dog.
There you go.
So sort of figure out what it is that you're hungry for. And there are so many creative solutions, ways of getting those needs met.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There's the touch and feel. We're born connected, okay? Yeah. So a child is born connected to the mother. And then you disconnect that, but they're born into the hands of somebody, right? And they're touched and they're kissed and they're breathed on. And so from the very moment you come into this world, hopefully you were in love at first sight. This is what I tell people. From the moment we're born, if you were lucky, and I hope majority of the children are, it's that love at first sight.
Yes.
And that is embedded from from ground zero of that child being on earth. So we desire that hug, because why? That brings us back to life.
Yeah.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head. Share the dog. That's life. It's a happy life, right? Dogs wagging.
Yeah. There's one other thing that I want to say. Before the show, we had a lovely conversation, and I have a real interest in how people respond to pain. So my experience with patients is that everyday people can tolerate huge amounts of pain. What is intolerable is to be alone in your pain. That's truly the cause of suffering.
It is.
And so just the reminder that as much pain as you were in, either maybe somebody in your family or maybe even yourself are suffering with COVID-19, or maybe you're dealing with some of the financial fallout, or maybe the pain of loneliness. You are not alone. We are all here. We're in it together. And just having that conscious reminder, anatomically and physiologically, the brain has 3 different parts. It's like the 3 stories in the house. So in the upstairs, there's the thinking brain. There's the cognitive resources that we need to find cures for COVID-19, to get a vaccine. Then there's the main floor. That's where we make the emotional decisions. And now that we can put people in functional MRIs, we know that that's where people make most of their decisions. And then in the basement, there's the reptile brain. There's the fight or flight. Immediate survival is at risk. And so we all need to do our very best to be in our thinking brain, the upstairs. That's where the solutions are. But so much of what we are facing right now will bring us right into the basement. We're concerned about the threats to our very health, our life, the finances that are going to support our life. So it's really easy to go into the basement. But if we can just have an awareness, oh, I'm in the basement again, and then try to get upstairs, that would be great. I was actually writing an article about how to stay calm during this time. And I ran into a computer glitch. And if there's anything that terrifies me, it's when something happens to the computer. So here I am writing an article about being in the upstairs, while I was retreating in the basement. It was actually pretty funny.
I'm glad you shared the fear of when things go wrong with your computer. Is that not the biggest fear in the world? Is
yes.
My phone died, and I had my phone just totally sizzle out one day, and I'm carrying it to the store can you please revive it? No, whatever I stored on it off. The things that we put our faith in right now. I've had my computer. I am an engineer by trade, and I abuse my computers tremendously. I tell people, if you want to beta test a computer or a device, send it to me, because I will push it past its limits. But all too often, I'm calling data retrieval companies to recover, even though I back up for whatever reason, it didn't back up that one file, right? So we don't want to lose our files. But you talk about getting back into the attic part of our life and mentally start seeing things through, but sometimes that's just very, very hard. And if you're sitting at home with other diseases beside COVID, you're feeling a little left out. Like in my case, I cannot go get my monthly treatments right now, but I really don't want to. But I know without them, I'm gonna have issues. So you got to think past this. And something I learned, and we talked about this, is that pain psychiatry, right? And there's a difference, learning how not to panic, how to deal with it, focus. Another place I learned this is through Taekwondo, right? Learn how to think past things. The more you practice something, the better you are at it, right? So practice breathing. They've got that going on right now. Gentleman, one of the doctors has said, you know what, people, start practicing some of these breathing techniques. So if you do get COVID, you know how to breathe through it. It's going to be painful. They're upfront with you. Fear. If you have facts, you have less fear. They're upfront with you. It's going to be painful. We don't want to scare you about it, but you need to learn. No, it's going to be painful, but you can get through it, right? We've had some successes, but that some of the things you're talking about, like caregiving without regrets. A lot of times we have to make decisions in caregiving, and it can be regretful. And you've got a very good message there. Can you share your book with our team here?
Sure.
Welcome to my team. Your team. So these are some lovely people from all over the world, Dr. Vicki. We've got Willie from down under, mate.
Good day, mate.
Good day, mate. And then I don't know how Nick does this. Alexandra Starr, his name is Sasha. He's from Canada, but also from Russia. And then Rakesh is from India, but he is in Hong Kong right now. And we all have these new social mannerisms that we're practicing, which is namaste. We have a little sign language. We're trying to unify the world, right?
I love it. I love it.
And our communities. And we're sending love, right? This is when we're sharing our
Oh, may I use those?
Yes, you may, please. So this is like hugging somebody. I'm hugging you. I'm sharing my love. We don't have to have, as much as you know, and I know that natural physical contact is very, very important to mankind. We're born with it. We found, these sign languages to share with each other from all over the world. And yeah, please do. That's what we're trying to share here is do things, be smart about it, have the facts and the knowledge. People are sitting at home scared of COVID. But they're also frustrated because of finances. I need to get back to work. How am I going to get back to work? But we got to be smart about it. And I think that's some of the coaching. We need coaching, right? Life coaching. I'll give you an example of one of the best life coachings I've ever experienced is when they had massive layoffs many, many years ago. They would spend a lot of money on life coaches, right? That you could go to all of these seminars. And that's what they would teach you. They would teach you that your real strengths are here and here, right? That job was nothing. I mean, what was interesting when I lost my job, I thought it was the end of the world. And a few months later, I found a job paying me 4 times the amount with 100 times better people. And I'm like, wow, how did I get this? So I never looked at those bad things like that as bad. I always try to say, what am I going to get out of it? And I think that's what we have to look at COVID, right? So what else do you see happen? Because we talked about the financial impact, and that's one of your biggest concerns is how people are mentally handling this.
Right. I think another challenge is to look around and see the pain of others and just bearing witness to the pain without knowing what can I do to make a difference. Like when I opened up the newspaper and read about people starving, it broke my heart. How do you bear witness to something like that? And what I decided is bearing witness is important. I am going to continue to read the news. I am going to continue to do the things that I can do. And I've also made the decision that I am going to focus my efforts on things that are working towards a healing.
And that's what we have to do. You know, you brought up something important, and Ankit, he brings it up, and I think out of frustration, but he mentions about all the food that we throw away every day right now, that we're disposing of tons and tons of milk and so many other products that we could be recycling back to people who are hungry. I mean, milk can be frozen and or even frozen dried and redistributed very easily, but instead we're taking the lazy way out. Now, I know that if they did it properly, they recycled it back, hopefully into a compost form so that it's used in a different way. But a lot of times we don't. But there are hungry people. We have a doctor or a person that comes on our show almost every day. He has gone out with his fortune. You know, God love him. And that's what he's been doing, is getting food out to people, you know, organizing teams. And maybe that's something that we can do, is because we can organize teams like this, right? And then get in contact with maybe some of the local grocery stores, and then find out through a database who's going hungry, what children are going hungry, because so many children require their lunches at school, right? This was one of my big concerns, is that there's so many children are not going to be going to school, that school for 5 to 6 hours a day was their peace, right? The place.
Yeah, but yes, I agree with you, but there are other people who are hungry too, including the elderly.
Yes,
you know, the vulnerable elderly.
And we need to get them not junk food, healthy food.
Exactly.
Right? We need to get them the healthy food. And there's so much food going to waste at the grocery stores. So somebody came up with a really cool idea where so bus drivers can still make money, is they're using bus drivers to deliver food to local families,
right?
Bus stops. And then the family could go to the bus stop. I mean, I don't think there's any harm, right? You know, do like my son does. The minute food is delivered to his door, he kind of lets it sit out there and he deodorizes the whole, or, you know, sanitizes every piece before it comes in the house, because he's up in New York. And because we talk about that, and he goes, oh, no. We gloves and mask, and then we sanitize every piece, and then we wash ourselves down, and like, wow, okay, Monk. You know, I don't know if you remember that TV series Monk, but
I do. Yes,
I think we're going to have to play that. I'm going to have to binge watch that, because I think our world is going to have to become a little bit Monk-like. One of the things we talk about, and see, that's changed, right? Is we're talking. We use the word new normal. And I watched a documentary the other day that was made years ago, and they were talking about humans use the term new normal when actually it's abnormal to our lifestyles, but we don't want to face the word abnormal because it brings us back to the memories of what we used to have. I thought that was very impactful, right? And again, that's another psychological, mental state that we have to change. If we were to talk about maybe getting people back to feeling better about their financial changes, because this is something that's very near and dear to your heart, and about the people that are hungry, what do you think we should do?
I think this is the time for pivoting and innovation. So I've done a lot of pivoting in my life, and right now part of what I'm doing is helping physicians pivot, because there are skilled physicians whose elective cases have been canceled, right?
Yes.
So there are neurosurgeons at home wondering what they can do.
Plastic surgeons, and yes, no, I know.
Even oncologists. So, you know, if we go upstairs to our thinking brains, there are so many ways that we can serve. So, for example, there are neurosurgeons who are delivering telemedicine care. If we all sort of go into our gifts, the beautiful thing about when we're living now is that we can engage with people just like you're doing here over the internet. So how can we share our gifts in creative ways? And then I think just trust something. So let me go and grab something that I have on my table here. All right, so this is, I keep this on my table. This is a salt and pepper shaker, and it's made from the ash from the Mount St. Helens eruption that was about 40 years ago, almost to the day. It was in May. And I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area when it exploded. And about 4 months after the volcano exploded, I had already planned to take a trip from San Francisco up to Seattle. So I just did it. We took a train ride, and I woke up on the second morning of our trip and looked out the window, and it looked like somebody had just taken a box of toothpicks and just dumped it, except those weren't toothpicks. Those were trees that had been blown over in the blast. I went up to that mountain about 5 years after the eruption, and it looked like a moonscape. There was no sign of life there. But over time, life re-emerged. The first species that were there was the desert lupin, and that's a plant that can extract nitrogen from the air. And then the lupin invited the pollinators, and it blocked the leaves so that the condition was right to create soil. And that led to the next wave of recovery. And I think we too will recover. If we can go from the kind of moonscape that I saw 35 years ago to life returning now, I completely trust that we are going to find creative ways of fixing not just the COVID-19 problem, but all of the financial fallout also. So I think we need to bear witness to those who are in pain, but we can all pivot and think about, okay, how can we contribute to the recovery, to the solution?
And I agree with you on that, and how you're reaching out to the physicians. We've got startup businesses that we're talking with. I've met with people who have pivoted their companies to making PPE equipment or distributing PPE equipment. Met with or talked with some people who are up in New York, and they've converted their factories to make masks. Even my son, who is stuck in New York with no job right now, he didn't take his sewing machine with him, and he's hand sewing masks. And they're perfect. They fit the nose and they frame the face, and he's hand sewing them, and he's making masks that are reusable so that you can wash them after you wear them once a week. And we talked about sanitizing masks, and I want to share this. I know this has nothing to do with our conversation with you, but I want to kind of share something that we were talking about, sanitizing everything and keeping everything clean in your mental mind. And he goes, well, how do I do that? Because I don't want to just use the wash machine for my mask every week. And I know that he's washing his outer clothes a lot. But I said, get the steam iron, right? Or we have a steamer at home, but get the steam iron out and steam each mask, because they're small, right? So you can just run the steam over each mask after you wear it every day and hang it up. Oh my gosh, Mom, that's great. So, who knows, we might invent like a little steamer that you run your mask through, right? That gets it past boiling and hang it up. And now you've got reusable masks that we hope works, right? We want to be positive that all of these things are working. And I think, again, that goes back to some of the things that you're talking about. And psychologically, we have to start accepting some things and hope that they work, but not have regrets right now. Right. That none of this is our fault. Even if you catch COVID, don't blame yourself right now. Get well and prevent it from spreading, right? Don't panic. I didn't mean to look away earlier, but a good friend of mine just texted me that he thinks he's recovering now with COVID. So, and I'm hoping that he'll come on our show and share with us the experience, because there's just so much out there, and we hear so many different stories. And that's what Ankit asked the question yesterday. We hear symptoms like this, right, Ankit? And symptoms like this. What is it, And I think
I have a question for Dr. Vicky as well. That people are maintaining the social distancing around the world. Most of them, if not everyone. So, I mean, due to the medical consequences and loneliness, they might need a psychologist or a doctor, or maybe someone who can teach them the life coaching skills, because it's difficult for a lot of people to live alone at this point of time, and not for a week, for maybe a couple of months. So, Dr. Vicky, what do you suggest in that regard? Because a lot of viewers would like to understand how they live alone and still they kind of in a good frame of mind.
Right, right. So I'm going to need to go, but let me just answer your question real quickly.
That's
I think that one thing to do is just recognize that it is difficult. It's not to deny, it's to recognize we have a human need to be connected together, and it is sad to be alone. So just recognize it and then ask yourself, what is it that I'm hungry for? You know, what do I want? Do I want to just laugh with somebody? Do I want somebody to listen to me? Do I want to just be reminded that I'm not the only one who's dealing with this? And then with this wonderful technology, whatever it is that you're hungry for, you can find it.
And thank you for that. Wow, that's impact. I hope you come back, Vicki, and share with us more inspirational things, and share with us what you're doing with the doctors if they need help, if we can connect the resources. We've got people who are engineers and developing all kinds of great, wonderful technology. Maybe we can connect some dots, right, and make ourselves a unified community.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
And share your book again. Put your book up so we can all. Is it on Amazon?
It is.
Put it up just a little bit closer. There you go. Caregiving without regrets. And I'm going to tell you, people, that's the most important key right there, is without regret. Is just make those decisions, work through them. Thank you so much, Vicki.
Hey, thank you for the invitation. Be well, everybody.
I'll see you.